Hi, I'm Bob Gymlan. The first documented account of gigantic hairy man-like creatures is from 500 BC by Hanno the Navigator, an explorer from Carthage. In Hanno's account of his brief encounter, he described them as, quote, savage people, the greater part of whom are women, who are covered in hair. Hanno didn't know anything about the beings, but he said that the natives held them in great reverence and didn't bother them. Then in 1625, explorer Andrew Battelle returned to England describing, quote, monsters that fed on fruit and are like a man, but with gigantic stature. And then, in 1847, a physician from Connecticut, enthralled with native stories of a woman-stealing monster, set out to shoot one of these beasts. Amazingly, he claims to have successfully shot one, but his creature's tracks went straight off a cliff. Either the creature overestimated its climbing abilities with its injury, or he simply committed suicide. Interesting to think about. The American physician took his team down a treacherous course to find where the creature's body fell, but the party could not recover their prize. Dejectedly, he began the trek home, when he stumbled upon another creature, this one in a group. This time he successfully shot and killed one of his quarry. His team had no way of transporting the hulking creature through deep bush in heat, so the physician cut off the head of his prize. And finally, the physician provided modern Western science with the evidence required to begin serious inquiry on the gorilla. Though I should note, it wasn't until 1902 that the larger eastern or mountain gorilla was shot, retrieved, and thusly verified. The point of this spiel was to illustrate that time is relative to those who perceive it, which is you and me. A large, hairy, man-like ape, thought to be mythical, was not proven until 1847. Less than 200 years ago, which seems like a long time, and it is, for any one individual or person, but 170 years is a blink of an eye in terms of populations, in terms of societal progress and historical perspective. 170 years ago, the gorilla was a myth, nothing more than the subject of illustrations and boogeyman stories. That's less than 200 years ago. The Roman Republic lasted 500 years, with the Roman Empire lasting 1,500 years. That is 2,000 years of Roman society. This yew tree, somewhere in a cemetery in the United Kingdom, is approximately 1,500 years old. Europeans have only been in the Americas for about 503 years. And how many of those years has anyone been looking for a cryptic ape? Also consider, Westerners in Europe have had access to Africa far longer than Europeans have had access to America. So the gorilla's verification would sensibly have quite the head start. I'm trying to say that 170 years is not so long, especially when comparing the verification of similar large primates. Compared to another, 170 years is no great length of time at all, especially when you consider that researchers have not even been using agreed-upon methodology until very recently. Basically, the only way to verify Bigfoot, until again recently, would have been for one to walk in front of a train, or a large caliber round, which seems unlikely when you consider that we are probably dealing with something that is smarter than us as far as motor skills are concerned. And Bigfoot, like other apes, are defined by their intelligence, critically and strategically. So the first similarity to Bigfoot and gorilla in regard to species verification is time frame. The two were and will be respectively verified in approximately the same time frame. As a note, Bigfoot has already been discovered. Bigfoot has not been verified, just as gorilla verification has occurred and Bigfoot verification is occurring, all in a relative time frame. Seeing as gorilla were only verified in 1847, 200 years is a microsample in the course of any field of study. These are Parthian pots, also known as Baghdad batteries. So it took over 2,000 years for batteries to look like they do today. And that is because time is long, but life is short. Primatology, like any other field, has a long way to go. And I'm going to continue with the Sasquatch gorilla comparison. So what other parallels exist between the two primates? Well, cultural depictions comes to mind. Gorilla, before and after they were verified, were seen as monstrous and very dangerous, as is represented by Emmanuel Fermat's 1859 sculpture entitled Gorilla Carrying Off a Woman. This piece of art was considered too frightening to be publicly displayed by the art scene. I guess because of the implications. But then there is the nice gorilla, and the ones who were friends with Tarzan, or Mighty Joe Young, or King Kong. So gorilla representations skew toward the best or the worst. Just as Bigfoot representations today skew to the best and also the worst. The fact that both creatures are treated similarly in the eyes of the mass media is not a coincidence, nor is it a coincidence that people had a rough idea of what a gorilla actually looked like before it was even verified, just as people have a rough idea of what Bigfoot looked like, though it has not been verified. Time frame and cultural perception are two parallels, but what else? Well, to me the most obvious is often the most overlooked by skeptics and researchers alike, and I'm talking about the creature's anatomy, particularly mass. The morphology of Bigfoot is in some respects on par with gorilla. I think it's worth taking a moment to discuss how massive gorilla actually are. In Cameroon, in 1946, a silverback western lowland gorilla was shot. He was a striking 6 foot tall and weighed over 580 pounds. So there is not only precedent, but reality, in a 500-plus pound ape wandering the woods. What I'm trying to say is that there is, in fact, not only a modern precedent, but a modern reality for a massive ape to roam undisturbed in the wilds in the remote places of the world. And though gorilla are intelligent, their intelligence, and just as importantly perhaps their mobility, pales in comparison to this equally real primate. In my opinion, one of the two apes is simply far more camera shy. So time frame, cultural perception, and anatomical precedence. Next is the notion of elusive remains. The only fossil gorilla that exist are in the form of 9 teeth. 9 teeth are the entire existing fossil evidence record for gorilla. I actually can't show you the 9 teeth because they are specifically copyrighted, but they come from a very close gorilla ancestor called Sauropithecus. And let that yet be another reminder that apes and monkeys once were a very common staple in forests, particularly those of varying elevations, be it Africa, Asia, Europe, South America, but apparently not North America for some reason. Conditions where great apes thrive, be it the Albertine Mountains of Africa or the Pacific Northwest in North America, simply are not conducive to fossil preservation, and this is just one of the many reasons that the odds are constantly against us, especially in the time frame that modern science would expect, or has come to expect. The next parallel between the two great apes I would like to discuss is behavioral correlation. First on the docket regarding a behavioral correlation is that the two apes seem to exclusively flee or avoid combative situations. This is a tendency towards flight rather than fight. Gorilla and Bigfoot seem to be evasive creatures as opposed to offensive creatures. There is no documented account of a gorilla killing a human, and I would argue the same for Bigfoot. Dave Paulides and the Wilderness Hunter on the shelf for a moment. But there really is no evidence or reason to believe that Bigfoot see any positive outcome resulting from combat with humans under any given situation. And they are quite right. Almost like they know what they're doing. Thus, Bigfoot must possess an environmental and topographical awareness that always entertains an obvious escape route. Another behavioral correlation is within the family unit itself. Gorilla are probably the best analog we have to Bigfoot in that regard. Gorilla are led by a silverback, or dominant male. He enjoys exclusive mating rights in exchange for being the troop's protector and guide to seasonal food resources, as he learned when he was young from a different silverback gorilla. According to Harcourt's Bachelor group of gorillas, 1988, 61% of gorilla troops have one male, with the rest of the troop being female, and 36% have one dominant male, with other subservient males. It has even been noted that silverbacks are more likely to allow males into the group when there is need. For example, if the silverback keeps losing his offspring to, say, leopard predation, he's more likely to allow another mature male gorilla into his group. To me, this represents intellect over instinct. Instinct tells the silverback to have sole mating advantage, where intellect tells him that mating won't do any good if he can't keep his offspring alive in the first place. Intellect over instinct is exactly why we have so much trouble with these guys, by the way. But back to family composition. Group sizes vary from 5 to 30 individuals. 60% of all females leave their group to join another, and 75% of males will eventually leave their group to join a new troop or start their own. Males typically leave when they are 10 or 11 years old, and females when they are 8 years old. And regarding those last two, it has actually been proven by sociologists that human females also typically leave their family at a younger age than males, just like gorilla. And again, this is all according to Harcourt from 1988, Bachelor groups of gorilla. And I think this is a halfway decent model for the social structure of Bigfoot. So let's extrapolate the gorilla social behavior to Bigfoot and see how it sounds. 61% of Bigfoot groups have one adult male, 36% of Bigfoot groups have one or more adult males, group size is between 5 and 30 individuals, 60% of females will leave the group at some point, 75% or more of males will leave the group, males tend to leave at 10 years of age, older than females who tend to leave at 8 years of age. And I should note, regarding these final statistics, these are the situations wherein sightings occur. I would argue that an individual leaving the group causes over 90% of sightings, when either a young adult or a dethroned alpha, perhaps physically or even emotionally damaged, is forced into a new range. They may encounter situations they may not have experienced before, like, say, roads, which is where most sightings occur, according to the BFRO. And in this particular instance, I'm inclined to agree with this son of a moneymaker. My final parallel between gorilla and Sasquatch is actually a prediction, and that is the proliferation of species. But let me explain what I mean. Western gorilla, seen here, were verified in 1847 by the surgeon from Connecticut. More than 50 years passed before the eastern gorilla, specifically the mountain gorilla, seen here, the larger of the two species, was successfully shot, retrieved, and therefore verified. Of the two species of gorilla, each has two subspecies. The western lowland gorilla and the cross river gorilla comprise the western gorilla species, and the eastern lowland gorilla and the mountain gorilla comprise the eastern gorilla species. The western gorilla, seen here, is an animal 30% smaller than its cousin to the east, seen here. And that's according to Groves and Wilson's Mammals Species of the World, a taxonomic and geographic reference. As gorilla have variants, Sasquatch certainly must as well. Compare the species that reside in, say, Louisiana, Texas, and Florida, and those in, say, Alberta. True to this parallel, I think size varies by approximately 30% as well, and these numbers represent mature males, in my opinion. So in review, we have a likely time frame for a great ape discovery, give or take 200 or 300 years. These things take time, which is hard to see in the moment. and that's because life is short, but time is long. It is rare for any one person, or even generation, to see discovery, because discovery is a process, and in this case, the discovery is the remaining, surviving, human family tree. Such an endeavor surely takes time. Next is cultural depictions, and I think that's a fairly obvious one. Is it curious to anyone else that there were sketches of gorilla by Westerners before gorilla were proven to exist? Does that sound familiar? And both apes are used as portrayals of our base desires, be it benevolent or downright beastly. Remember, consistency is key to reality. The third parallel is often overlooked, and that's the matter of basic anatomical precedence for a massive ape to live somewhere in the wilderness. I've spent a lot of time watching gorilla, albeit in captivity, but trust me, a lot of time. And they are monsters in their own right. Imagine a gorilla on 2 legs, and you're already halfway to Sasquatch. Then we come to the condition of existing evidence. You have the undeniable fact that primate remains are scarce. Numerous extinct species of hominoids are defined by only a handful of teeth. This is a fundamental understanding in physical anthropology. Due to the lifestyle of the primates, the relatively small populations they have, and the condition of their environments. Historically, gorilla can only be, quote, proven by a total of 9 teeth. So as odd as this may sound, the fossil record for gorilla is not so different than the fossil record for Sasquatch. The similarity being that both are virtually non-existent. There are many unidentified primate dental remains. Why should some not belong to a predecessor of Bigfoot, or even Bigfoot itself? And then we come to the behavioral correlation between the two that seems to indicate a degree of intellect over instinct. Obviously, with both species, but super hyper magnified in the North American ape variety. And then, last but not least, most interesting to me, is species proliferation, or special variation. I think after an Animal Planet, HD drone, making a reality show about meerkats, accidentally gets high definition, unequivocal, and irrefutable footage of a Sasquatch family group, people may be even more surprised to find the corpse of a skunk ape washed up in the debris of a hurricane in Florida 25 years later. To me, gorillas seem to be the best verified analog we have to Sasquatch. Either gorilla or humans. But that is a bit too mind-boggling for me at the present moment. It is fascinating to think, though, that a mere 200 years ago, scholars, skeptics, travelers, armchair researchers, hunters, and professors, people just like you and me, sat and probably argued about the reality of hairy, man-like monsters who roam in the wild places of the world. The ones who argued against gorilla, they were wrong. Anyhow, I hope you see the merit in comparing these two great apes, and the understanding that both were considered a myth not so long ago, just as both will be considered fact before too long. And I uploaded this video on January 1st, the first day of 2017. This just may be the year. You never know. And by the way, if you want this year to be better than last year, then make it. It's your decision. And while we hurry up and wait for more results regarding this creature, make sure to like this video, subscribe if you'd like to see more. Thanks an awful lot for listening, and seriously, make this year better than your last year. You owe yourself that much.